Good morning Year 10. We're moving on today with our probability and it's lesson 4 and we're going to do something called the AND or rule. Now this only works when events are independent of each other. That means not related. So if you're making some notes, we need independent events and that they're not related to each other. So an example would be flipping a coin and also rolling a dice. Whatever happens on the coin doesn't affect what happens on the dice, so they're independent. And the key bits to know, just from our notes, is that AND, in terms of probability, means multiply. So if when you're saying the sentence, you've got the word AND in there, it means you're going to multiply somewhere. Or, in terms of probability, means that we are going to add. Okay, so when we're using the word AND, we're multiplying. When we're using the word OR, it means we add. And so we can start to look at different combinations of probabilities and come up with an overall answer using the AND or OR rule. Now, on Google Classroom today, there's a worksheet, just got 3 questions and an example. I'm going to go through the example now. What I want you to do after that is do the 3 questions and submit me your answers. I'll mark it, so I need to see that bit of working out. There's a quick way and there's a longer way. Both get you the same marks on the exam. So, moving to our sheet. And we've got our first scenario. So our first scenario is that we've got a 6-sided red dice and a 4-sided blue dice. Now the probability of getting a 6 on red and a 4 on blue, a score of less than 3 on the red dice and more than 2 on blue, and the probability of a score of 9. So I'm going to show you how to do it with the AND or rule shortly, but the first thing we're going to do is, if we're struggling, we're going to draw something called a probability space diagram. So I'm going to do my red dice first, and I've got 1 to 6 on my red dice, so I'm going to have the numbers 1 to 6. And I've also then got my blue dice, which has only got 4 sides, so I've got the numbers 1 to 4. And what we can now do is we can fill in our sample space diagram. Now we can choose to do this with the numbers, or we can choose to do the totals. So for example, here I've got a 1 on red and I've got a 1 on blue, and that gives me a total of 2. And it may well be in this question, if I read further down, that I might need all of those different bits. So I'm going to fill in my sample space diagram just by putting all my numbers in, and it'll give me all the different combinations I could probably expect during this bit of probability. And that means once I've got all these written in, I can then start to go through and start working out my probabilities of all the questions at the bottom. So in the exam, they'll just give you space to do this. It doesn't necessarily mean that they'll tell you to do this exactly. It just means that you can then work through, and once you've got this, just like with tree diagrams, which is our next topic, you can then quite happily just work everything out straight away. So here's all my different combinations. And I'm going to put my totals in a different colour. So I've got a total of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Keep my totals going. Okay, and you're going to go through and fill all of these in, because that means you've got all the information that you need to then answer the questions. Okay, so the first question they're asking me for here is a probability of getting a 6 on the red dice. So I go across to 6 on red and a 4 on blue. Now remembering about our probability, we look at the number of ways it can happen, which in this case is 1, divided by how many things altogether. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 times 6, so 24 things altogether. So my probability there is 1 out of 24. I'm then going to look at less than 3 on red, so it's a 2 or a 1, and more than 2 on blue. Well, actually as a section, that's that bit. So there's 4 different ways it can happen out of my 24. I don't cancel it down, okay? I only cancel it down if the examiner asks me to. And then last but not least, a probability of a score of 9. Now looking at my scores of 9, that's where they are. And so there's 2 out of 24. So let's do that using the sample space probability space diagram. Let's do that using the AND and OR rule. Well, because we know the 2 dice are independent, this is the probability of 6 on red times by the probability of 4 on blue. Now, the chance of getting a 6 on red is 1 out of 6, 4 on blue is 1 out of 4. I times them together and I get 1 out of 24. So as soon as you become confident using this method, you don't need this big picture. So you're welcome to go straight to these answers today, as long as you show you're working out. Next one, again I can split it. So I've got less than 3 on red, and I'm going to times that by more than 2 on blue. So less than 3 on red, well that's 2 out of 6. More than 2 on blue, that's 2 out of 4. Multiply them together, 2 times 2 gives me 4, 6 times 4 gives me 24. And last but not least, a score of 9, and this one's probably a little bit more complicated, but I've got the probability of a 5 on red times the probability of 4 on blue. So that's one way. So it's 5 on red and 4 on blue, plus the probability, because it's OR, I get a 6 on red and I get a 3 on blue. Now, when I add those together, I get 5 on red is 1 out of 6 times by 1 over 4, which is 1/24. Same on the other side, 1/24. So I've got 1/24 plus 1/24. Remember, when the denominator is the same on a fraction, you just add the top. So I get 2 out of 24. So I can either do the probability space diagram, or I can use my AND and OR rule, which will be really important tomorrow when we come to doing tree diagrams. Only 3 questions to do today. Please submit your working out. I'll mark it and give you a score. Have a good day.